Mangwanani Mwalele Pofu Kenjani Kekwas Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show, bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Bedi and Anna Raiza Kweyo, ready to engage with the content. How are you, Anna?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic.
All right, here are the top stories this morning. Renewed red alert on food crisis in East Africa as climate change bites. Gauteng hires 800 liquor inspectors to tackle booze abuse, and Rwanda genocide suspect rearrested in South Africa. You can follow all our programs on our website called oneup2.com, as well as on DSTV 285 and GoTV 25 in Namibia. Later on the show, we have Talent Gore here with the stories from Zimbabwe. We'll be right back shortly. Here are the news making headlines. Renewed red alert on food crisis in East Africa as climate change bites. Agricultural and allied experts yesterday raised another red alert on food insecurity in East Africa, largely blamed on climate change. They have called for urgent interventions to address the crisis, noting that 63% of the bloc's population is undernourished. The impact of climate change is visible everywhere in the region. We should tackle it from the underlying cause, warned Jean-Baptiste Havingumana, the Productive Sector Director at the East African Community Secretariat. He said that despite last-minute rains during the last farming season, he was still worried that there would be sufficient rains during the coming season.
Now moving over to South Africa, the liquor industry and the Gauteng provincial government have signed a pledge to put safety before profit, with Premier Panyaza Lesufi announcing plans to hire 800 liquor inspectors. Shebeens taverns and other drinking establishments have seen a series of crime-related incidents, including mass shootings. Now Lesufi said the province is determined to address the challenges associated with liquor misuse head-on. Through compliance monitoring, eradicating illegal trade and reducing corruption, we aim to foster an era where all traders operate responsibly and uphold the law. To ensure this, we are in the process of employing 800 liquor inspectors that will jointly work with law enforcement. The Gauteng government said it is taking decisive action to prioritize safety, reduce crime, and promote responsible practices.
Now, in our next story, Rwanda genocide suspect rearrested in South Africa. Rwandan fugitive Fulgence Kayeshema, who has been in custody in South Africa, has been arrested again on an order for his transfer to Arusha, Tanzania, to stand trial for genocide. The latest development, which were at the request of the UN International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, seem to have caught his lawyers by surprise. He was arrested while in a holding cell at the High Court in Cape Town earlier on Tuesday. The tribunal wants him to answer to charges that he allegedly orchestrated the killing of approximately 2,000 Tutsi refugees at a Catholic church in Rwanda during the 1994 genocide.
We apologize to some of our sensitive viewers for the graphic images. However, that was the story of a genocide which the world is reeling with till this very day. Moving over, as hospitals around the Red Sea state experience partial or complete shutdown, Sudanese patients with renal failure receive care at a center in Port Sudan as others wait. Out of 37 dialysis machines, we're operating 25 as there is a lot of demand, and every day a machine goes out of service. So if there are no quick fixes and no medical equipment or machines, the center will have to close down, explained Yasser Mahmoud, director of a kidney dialysis crisis center in Port Sudan. More than 80% of Sudan's hospitals are going out of service due to ongoing fighting between the army and the rapid support forces, according to the World Health Organization. The trauma hospital is currently out of service and the children's hospital is operating at 50%.
No current plan to rise Nigeria fuel prices. This is according to Nigerian President Master Bola Tinubu, who has assured citizens that the current price of petrol will remain the same, as there is no plan to increase the prices of fuel at this time. This follows the warning by some oil marketers that the price of petrol would rise again for the third time since the president resumed office late May. They said this is due to Nigeria's foreign exchange crisis, but President spokesperson Ajuri Ngelale told BBC News that Master Tinubu and the industry stakeholders are convinced that they can maintain current pricing without reversing our deregulation policy by swiftly cleaning up existing insufficiency within the midstreams and downstreams petroleum sector. Now, in the same vein, Nigeria's state oil company NNPC posted a statement online explaining that we do not have the intention to increase our pump prices as widely speculated.
All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories on Africa. Good morning. As Zimbabwean elections are just around the corner, we'll be talking to Talent Gore about the latest developments in the House of Stone after the break. All right, so a policeman was charged after attending an opposition CCC Nelson Chamisa rally. Talent Gore is here with that story and more. Talent, was he in uniform? What transpired?
Good morning, Ashwin and Africa. Good morning. So apparently a police officer who's based in Kai, Matabeleland, North Province, has been charged for attending a city rally which was being addressed by the party leader Nelson Chamisa. Henry Masimbe is charged with contravening paragraph 48.1 of the schedule to the police services, which pertains to actively participating in politics. He has been in service for 9 years, and he allegedly went to Nesinga Growth Point under the pretext of collecting a murder docket. He, however, then proceeded to the venue of the rally, and whilst at the rally, the defaulter removed the jacket covering his yellow t-shirt and was seen following the convoy of CCC leader Nelson Chamisa, chanting the party slogan and raising his index finger. This was being said in the charge sheet. The defaulter was also observed clapping hands, acknowledging the speech being delivered by Nelson Chamisa, thereby contravening the said act. Apparently, if you're in Zimbabwe, if you're a police officer, if you're a soldier, you're not allowed to participate or to partake in politics. You have to be apolitical. So him being seen clapping and also acknowledging the speech which is being delivered by CCC party leader Nelson Chamisa, it was seen as contravening a certain act in the Police Act. So that is not allowed in Zimbabwe, and that is why he's being charged for contravening the said act.
All right, very interesting indeed. Talent. Now moving over to your next story. The Minister of Finance wants Zimbabweans to embrace the local currency. Why?
Yes, for the past months, I remember I've been talking about how the Zim dollar has been destabilized and how the United States dollar continues to gain over the Zimbabwean dollar. And the Treasury Minister Mthuli Ncube has pleaded with Zimbabweans to embrace the local currency for the country to achieve growth and stability objectives of the National Development Strategy 1 economic blueprint. He said that this combined with other structural reforms underway creates the necessary conditions for currency stability. He also said that the attainment of durable macroeconomic stability combined with improved electricity supply situation is expected to spur economic growth above the projected 5.3 in 2023. So in Zimbabwe, apparently people no longer use the Zimbabwean dollar to buy goods. They use the United States dollar, and you find out that most people, they earn their salaries in Zimbabwean dollars and they have to convert to United States dollars because the Zim dollar has lost its power against the United States dollar. So it is much cheaper and it is more doable to use the United States dollar rather than using the Zim dollar. So the finance minister is urging Zimbabweans to embrace the local currency. As it stands, most companies, they are now paying their employees a certain percentage of their salaries in United States dollars. In United States dollars, take for example, if one earns 1 million, they will be given 1 million Zimbabwean dollars. They will be given 100 United States dollars to compensate. So they give, let's say, 30% of their salary in United States dollars and 70% in
Zimbabwean dollars.
Zim dollars.
I do wonder if the
Yes.
finance minister himself is paid in Zimbabwean dollars. I mean, when there's 200% inflation, you are essentially asking people to embrace the local currency to their own detriment. And for the first time, Talent, you said something inaccurate. You said you've been talking about the Zimbabwean dollar declining for the last 3 months. If I calculate correctly, it's been about 3 years, my lady. At least 3 years. All right, let's move over to the last of your stories. SADC journalists and entertainment personalities visited Zimbabwe. I'm laughing because I had a look at the Herald. Was it the Herald? No, it was Daily News's cartoon with Pearl Tusi adorning the president's scarf. Were they there for political reasons? Why are they there?
No, apparently they were not in Zimbabwe for political reasons. They were on a tour, and this tour was called the tour was called Familiarizing the SADC journalists and media personalities on Zimbabwe. A group of journalists and entertainment personalities from a number of SADC countries were in Victoria Falls in a brand Zimbabwe tour that is aimed at promoting the destination and supporting the Zimbabwe's Open for Business mantra. There were close to 30 journalists, and there was Pearl Tusi, and also there was Pearl Tusi, and also Selo Make Kancube was also in Zimbabwe. They visited Victoria Falls, and they were invited to the State House where they dined with the president, and there were pictures which were circulating online whereby they were seated with the president, and they're also wearing the Zimbabwean scarf that the president usually wears. And apparently their visit was just to familiarize themselves with Zimbabwe and also for them to become brand ambassadors for Zimbabwe. They also visited the president's farm in Kwekwe, where they described the president as a hardworking man and his family as a hardworking family. And they also said that the SADC president should follow what the president was doing in terms of his farming techniques, in terms of trying to put Zimbabwe on the map. Apparently, this did not go well with the citizens in Zimbabwe, who then called out the media personalities and journalists, saying that they were pro ZANU-PF and they were promoting ZANU-PF and they were not pro democracy. So that is what people were saying online. They were bashing Pearl 2C to the extent that Pearl 2C had to come do a live video to explain why she was in Zimbabwe.
Yes, I mean, certain things are quite clear to see. I always like to imagine, we work in television, perception is reality. No one else has adorned that scarf aside from the president. And any time you are praising a president that has that many question marks, perhaps you're happier with Cyril Ramaphosa than we might have thought. Thank you very much, Talent Gore, for bringing us the news stories from Zimbabwe.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
It's always good having you on Africa. Good morning. Let's have a look at the weather predictions.
In our economic news this morning, Mozambique 80 to start taxation for digital commerce. The tax authority will this semester roll out the pilot phase for the taxation of commercial transactions carried through digital channels. The measure is aimed at improving control of income generated in Mozambique and to create mechanism to raise more revenue for state coffers, according to Amorim Abase, coordinator of 80's Digital Economy Taxation Unit. For this purpose, taxes will be charged on all sales of goods and services generating income for domestic electronic commerce. At the same time, the AT intends to control the tax all transactions for the purchase and sale of services carried out by mobile banking and the income generated by commission from electronic money agents and institutions, including operations carried out using cryptocurrencies.
Now, Namibia's central bank kept its main lending exchange rate unchanged at 7.75% yesterday, citing softening inflation pressures and the need to maintain a currency peg to the South African rand. The decision comes after a 50 basis point hike at its previous policy meeting in June and 225 BPS hikes in April and February. Namibia's consumer inflation fell to 4.5% in annual terms in July, compared with 5.3% in June. The Bank of Namibia said on Wednesday that 2023 inflation was now forecast to average 5.6%, down 0.4 percentage points on the forecast it gave in June. We're going to head to the economic indicators just before Adi Hochad joins us for the sport.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, starting off with tennis news first. The Cincinnati Open continues on the WTA and ATP. All the men and women top players in the world playing in this tournament. It's still week one, and first round result for the number one seed in the men's division, it is Carlos Alcaraz. He's through to the next round of 32, but it was a tough game for him. He beat Jordan Thompson of Australia by 7-5, 4-6 and 6-3 to advance. Also, the number two seed, that is Novak Djokovic. He's through to the next round where you play Alejandro Fokina of Spain. One of the top seeds in the men's division that's out early in the tournament is Cameron Norrie of Great Britain. He was number 13 seed and he lost to Gilles Monfils of France. And Monfils also had a good tournament in Canada recently, and he beat Norrie by 3-6, 6-4 and 6-3. Not good news for South African Lloyd Harris. He's back in action again after injury, and he lost to Max Purcell of Australia in the first round by 6-4 and 6-4. On the WTA, the women's side of the draw of the Cincinnati Open, it is Ons Jabeur of Tunisia. She's the number 5 seed. She had a tough game in her first round game, and she beat Alelina Kalinina of Ukraine by 6-3, 6-7 and 7-6 to advance to the next round. Caroline Wozniacki, she's making a comeback to international tennis again. She lost, unfortunately, to Vavreda Kashava. She is from France, 6-4 and 6-4. And then there's also a high seed that's out in the early rounds. It's number 13 seed, Belinda Bencic. She's from Switzerland. She lost to Cristina Busca of Spain in the 3 sets. Moving on to rugby news, and it's the World Cup rugby starting soon in France. And the news from the World Cup of rugby is that related to that is that England captain Owen Farrell, his red card was overturned in a disciplinary hearing, and he picked up a red card in the friendly game the last weekend against Wales. But now there's no sanction against him. A 3-man panel of Australia said that there was intervention from another tackler that changed the dynamics of the tackle, and England captain Owen Farrell, no sanction for him. He can play in 2 warm-up games for England and also in the opening game for them against Argentina. Not everybody happy with the call. It's Professor John Faircloth. He is from Britain, and he's from the player welfare group Progressive Rugby, and he said the verdict made a mockery of health concerns. Moving on to soccer news, and it's still transfer news, but not in the English Premier League. It is another signing for the Saudi Arabian Soccer League. They're making lots of high-profile signings, and it is a player from Manchester City, the defender, Aymeric Laporte, and he confirmed that he will go to the Saudi Arabian League, and he will join Al Nassr, and it's for undisclosed price. Already Al Nassr do have Cristiano Ronaldo on their books, also Sadio Mane and also Alex Telles, and recently also Neymar, the Brazilian striker. He signed for Al Hilal, and that was for apparently 150 million euros every year that they're going to play Neymar to play in the Saudi Arabian League. It seems like it's very similar what the Saudi Arabian Soccer League is doing in terms of what the Live Golf Initiative did with signing some of the top players in the world for very high numbers. And closing off with cricket news on international sports news, and it's the Cricket World Cup 50 overs that start in October in India, and it is one of the key players for England that indicated that he will be able to play in the World Cup again. That is Ben Stokes, the Test captain, and he was influential in 2019 when England won the World Cup, but he's coming out of retirement to join England in a 15-man squad that is to tour New Zealand in September, and that's a strong indication also that he will be in the team to defend the World Cup later in India. That's international sports news for today. Hope you have a great sport day, and we talk international sport again tomorrow. Goodbye.
All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast. Let's have a look at the highlights. A renewed red alert on food crisis in East Africa as climate change bites. Gauteng to hire 800 liquor inspectors to tackle booze abuse. Rwanda genocide suspect re-arrested in South Africa. Sudan's turmoil is accompanied by a severe medical need. Mozambique